Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this afternoon's keynote. I'd like to welcome to the stage our Vice President of Local Arts Agencies and Advancement, Clay Lord.
Hello. Welcome back. I am Clay Lord. I'm the Vice President of Local Arts Advancement at Americans for the Arts. I came up out of NAMP, and I love NAMP, and I love all of you. So we're really excited to have you here. I'm going to be introducing Donna Walker-Kuhne, but first I want to tell you about a project that we're doing. And by way of that, I want to tell you about something that is in the local newspaper today, which is an op-ed by Karen Krieger and Bob Lynch, our President and CEO. As you can see, it talks all about the role of the arts in communities and driving economics and the quality of life. The arts play a deep role in people's lives, support and engage with communities, and make places stronger and more vibrant. How awesome is that? So make sure to get your copy. We are doing more and more of these op-eds in the communities that we go to for our various events, and we find that it really helps to drive the message home when people in the community know that we're here and you're here and we're all here for the arts. So this is all part of a project called New Community Visions. This is called the Red Can Jam, and it's an event that happens on the Cheyenne River Reservation in South Dakota. It is a partnership between the Rapid City Arts Council and a group called the Cheyenne River Youth Project. And what it does is it crosses graffiti and learning about graffiti with traditional Lakota culture. And the reason that they designed it and created it is because they were dealing with a lot of different negative health outcomes and disengagement from the youth in the Lakota community. And through this program, they've been able to actually see a decline in the suicide rate and an uptick in the participation of youth in their community, and a kind of great infusion of pride in the traditional Lakota culture through the use of a graffiti culture that was already sort of there, and they've kind of harnessed, right? So that's basically what New Community Visions is. New Community Visions is a 2-year initiative that we're in the process of embarking on right now, that is designed to basically do 2 things: surface new knowledge and create new systems and tools. What are we trying to do that for? Well, we're trying to do that because in any given community there are lots of different players, and they're all focused on one basic thing. They're focused on healthy, vibrant, equitable communities. What does that mean? Well, we've chosen the words healthy, vibrant, and equitable because we think that they function in tandem with each other, that one plays off of the other, that they all have to exist in order for a community to be the best that it can be. And we believe that by linking those things together and talking about community and talking about the role of arts in that community, we can make communities better over time, as I'm sure all of you do too, right? So how do we do that? Our theory of change basically is based on the idea that any given community is made up of what we think are about 30 different contributors to community health. And they range from agriculture and food all the way down to economic development and business, a lot of different social indicators. Art is one of them, diversity, access, equity, and inclusion work. And what you do is you throw arts and there. So you say arts and transportation, arts and infrastructure, and through that you create and help maintain healthier, more vibrant, more equitable communities. We divide it up into 10 more basic sectors that are a little bit easier to follow. And when you fully integrate arts into those other places, we believe that you can transform systems, you can impact impacts, which is to say you can mitigate negative outcomes and enhance positive outcomes over time. You can increase participation and opportunity and make sure that more people are being given opportunities to raise the voice that they already have and make a difference in their community life. So we're trying, through that, to transform America's communities. And this is a lot of the work that Americans for the Arts is embarking on in the next year. New Community Visions is only part of it. And you may have seen some of the other aspects of it. We have a campaign on NPR. We've got a variety of different other visibility work that we're doing in order to help all of these other sectors, as well as the philanthropic community, the public and private sector, understand the role of arts and culture in what they're trying to do. So how are we trying to figure out what arts and culture can do? Well, first we're trying to assess kind of the current reality, and talk with people about what they see as their future reality. What's going on in your community, what's going to go on in your community in the next 10 years. Then we're kind of working with them to specify what change looks like and how they can get to a more positive place. And then we're trying to have a very specific conversation about the programs and services that we can create, that our local arts agency partners can create, that producing organizations can create, that together can integrate the arts into making that change more possible, reducing barriers, increasing capacities. So we're doing 8 forums across the country. We've done 2 of them so far. We've got another one next week in San Jose. We're doing 1 a month, basically, until the spring. And these forums are made up of about 100 cross-sector participants. So that's about 50 arts people and 50 people who don't work in the arts and who care about communities independent of the arts more than they care about our arguments for the arts. And through that, we're trying to have conversations about how arts are a necessary tool, how artists are active partners, how a deeper understanding of arts and culture in that community can help surface barriers that exist there, or help make capacities there bigger and stronger and more able to tackle those barriers. And then we're assembling a set of examples like the one about the Red Can Jam, so that we can have conversations with people about the role of arts in moving towards health, vibrancy, and equity. Outcomes and outputs. The most major of these is a set of books that we'll be releasing over time. We released the first one in June. It's out at the bookstore. It's called Arts in America. It's 10 essays about non-art sectors and what's going to happen to them in the next 10 years, and the role that each and every one of us in the arts sector can play in making sure that those sectors move in a direction that is towards healthy, vibrant, equitable communities. The second is a book that we'll release in June. It's a collection of writing by a man named Robert Gard, who was one of the founders of the local arts movement. The third orange block there, that is actually an ebook that we'll be releasing chapter by chapter. That's a collection of conversations between social change artists. And then the fourth one, New Community Visions, is the culminating book, and it'll be our blueprint to understand how to integrate arts and culture into all of these conversations that are happening all over the country. So we got these 4 phases. The last phase, the big one, is programs and services, and that's where we're trying to make this as concrete and actionable and change-making as possible. So how do local arts organizations and local arts agencies do their work? We've identified these 9 different ways. Things like policy and advocacy, producing, facilities management, programs and services of various types, grant making, distribution of funds. And what we're basically trying to do is take those 30 sectors, have a conversation about how they integrate into those 9 ways that local arts organizations do their work, create a bunch of tools, and make the change happen. We got a lot of different partners and contributors. I'm not going to talk about all of them. Funding partners. We've got a national advisory committee, including Nella Vera, who's here today. And I want to thank all of them for giving us advice as we move towards launching and running through this complicated project. And then we have a variety of different local, state, and regional partners, all 6 of the regional arts organizations, all of the local arts agencies in those communities, all of the state arts agencies, et cetera. And then we've got a bunch of collaborators and voices, and you guys can be part of this too. If you have a story about the role that arts has played in making your community better, if you have a story about your organization or a particular artist that's doing amazing work, we have a program called Arts Action Heroes, and we want to hear about it. And if you go to our website and type in Arts Action Heroes in the search bar, you can get to that page and submit that story, and we're integrating those into our conversations as we move forward. And whether that means that we're talking about arts in the environment and environmental sculpture that helps people understand the water cycle, or we're talking about arts in prisons with Red Ladder Theater Company in San Jose doing work to help prisoners understand alternative pathways as they get out of prison, or you're talking about arts in education and the use of music to help people understand math and science. We are talking about the role that arts play in making everyone, everywhere better. Arts makes more things possible. And we want to make sure that everyone knows that. And so, in that capacity, we want everyone to help us make sure everyone knows that. So take a look at our website, americansforthearts.org/communityvisions, to find out more, and pass on the word about what we're doing. Thank you very much. And so now, speaking of transforming America's communities, it's my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, Donna Walker-Kuhne, Vice President of Community Engagement at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. Acknowledged as the nation's foremost expert on audience diversification by the Arts and Business Council, Donna Walker-Kuhne has devoted her professional career to increasing access to the arts for all. She's also the author of the book, Invitation to the Party, Building Bridges to the Arts, Culture, and Community. Donna has provided multicultural marketing for over 20 Broadway productions, as well as numerous nonprofit organizations around the world. She's the recipient of the 2012 Women of Excellence Award from the National Action Network and was named one of the 25 most influential Black women from the Network Journal. Please help me welcome Donna Walker-Kuhne.
Good afternoon, everyone. I should say friends. I am so happy to be here. I love this conference. I think that the opportunity for arts marketers to gather together and share ideas and strategies is so important. So I'd like to thank Americans for the Arts for your very kind invitation. I'd like to thank all of you for coming and being so engaging. You know, there's such an electricity here. I had the privilege of presenting the first keynote for the NAMP conference in 2001. It was a month after 9/11. And Gary Stoyer was then running the Arts and Business Council, and we were very concerned that no one would show up. But 400 of you, arts marketers, came. And it's been since that time, I think that Americans for the Arts and this conference has provided a pivotal opportunity and environment for us to be able to develop and expand in our work. So today, I'd like to talk to you about community engagement and the kind of work that I've been doing, and I know that many of you are doing as well. You know, we live in a very complex society which requires a nimbleness, creativity, and passion for extending and engaging new audiences and artists throughout the world. And I believe that the deeper we understand the art and our audiences, the more that we will see success in our work. So I call this the time of dynamic development. You know, this is the time when we really get to drill down and figure out what is the art product, who is it that I'm trying to engage, how do I put these two forces together? And I know here today we have presenters and arts marketers and students and all kinds of different individuals who work in our field. And I hope that we all embrace this moment with a very healthy and respectful curiosity for others, especially for the purpose of creating diversity in our arts audiences. So there's questions, I think, continuously that we should ask ourselves. I know I ask myself every day. The first one is, so what is the current state of diversity in my own arts organization? And what influences success? And how do we measure success? So I've been moved recently by several comments that indicate to me that there's some deep thinking in this area. Norman Lear recently gave a speech on the role of using the arts to combat racism, sexism, and homophobia. And he said, before we can begin to use the arts as a tool for liberation, we must first wrestle with the disease within our own ranks. We must understand that while all oppressions are not the same, they're linked to each other. So this reminded me then of a Buddhist concept that I really like. It's called dependent origination. And it says that everything is linked in an intricate web of causation and connection, and nothing exists solely on its own accord. And then to further this point, George C. Wolfe said in an article years ago, we are all incomplete versions of something else that gets completed by somebody else's story. And what is so wonderful about America is that we need each other to fill in the blanks. Part of your story bleeds into mine, and part of mine bleeds into yours. It's that fragmentation of identity that tells us who we are. So that's an important point that I want to make about the interconnectedness of life and the work that we do, the communities and the art that we're working with. And then Doug Borick wrote recently in Arts Journal. He asked these really important questions. He says, how committed is your arts organization to community engagement? Is there a board-approved statement? Is community engagement a significant feature in your organizational plans? Are there staff members with assigned responsibilities, and on what level? And who do they report to? And do they have a budget? Is the department aligned with programming? These are questions that are very important, not only to ask, but to develop the answers if we want to see the kind of movement I think that we all dream about. And in addition to understanding the interconnectedness of life, art, and humanity, is this importance of transformation and the power of transformation. I know each and every one of you have experienced that by working in the arts, which is why we choose to continue in this field. So Jason Sang wrote recently in an article, to fundamentally transform the field in order to meet a fundamentally changing nation and time, we need to fundamentally change who is in the field. Many conversations on the issue of diversity in the arts are good at identifying the symptoms, but fail to frame their solutions to solve a problem that is systemic, entrenched, and ubiquitous. So before we can transform the field, we first must understand what it is. So these are important ideas, I think, that help frame our thinking. And what I was really impressed with, recently, the New York City Arts Commissioner requested surveys on staff diversity throughout the arts community. Boy, did that create a ripple. I mean, there was a lot of trembling going on because, in many instances, there is not the kind of staff diversity that one would imagine. But he was very clear. He said that the reason for this was not to be punitive, but to learn, share best practices, and to see where are the holes that we need to fill so that we can represent, we meaning cultural arts organizations, represent the diversity of New York City. So then along with that, almost about a month later, maybe before, the Ford Foundation then announced that they were, changing their funding to a more equitable distribution of wealth, which would look at education, helping young people, and look at justice based on race, ethnicity, and gender. So to me, these are strong indicators that there's deep thinking in the leadership in our arts field that is recognizing that we have to change the way we do business, and that the time is now. So what's changing? Well, the demographics. Yesterday I attended a wonderful session that was looking at demographics and immigration, and I think anyone involved in arts marketing, you should be very, very close to the data. That means that you understand who's coming into your city, who's leaving, and why. And so there's a lot of different studies that you can look at. Pew Charitable Trust, I tend to like. I think their research is really thorough. And of course, the U.S. Census, to the best ability that they can, tries to provide us, information that can be as useful as well. But there's three facets, I think, when we talk about demographics that are important, and population growth. So first of all, we know that the U.S. Census reports continuously that in America, by 2042, the majority of the people in America will be people of color. So this means that how am I preparing now? I don't believe that we can wait until 2041 to start thinking about, and you're probably thinking, well, I won't be here. Well, I'm going to say, I bet you will be here. And you better be here because you're the ones that are creating this foundation to help move this forward. But it's important for us to think about how am I preparing, for the change in demographics in our country, and there's a lot of it's represented by the increase in our Latino population, not just migrating to America, but the number of births that are happening in America at this time. And that in this particular demographic, and particularly the Mexican community, that there are multiple births, whereas in white families, they're having less births. And I really saw this 10 years ago, my husband and I, actually 13 years ago, my husband and I adopted our daughter. And, we really saw the demographics changing then at that time because we wanted a biracial daughter. And we had to wait, 2 years for that to manifest itself. And then our adoption agency actually had to close down the infant adoption component because there were just not those numbers of babies available. So it's just interesting when you look and see, where is the movement and the growth. The second point is, population patterns, and we look at, so who is, really helping the America to grow? What does that look like? And then thirdly is interracial relationships. There's been much larger social acceptance now of different kinds of people coming together based on love, which I like to think. And so, the Pew Charitable Trust tells us that social change, not just demographics, is a driving force towards this change in birth rates. It tells us that in 1980, there were 3% of white people that were married to a person of color and then produced children, and today it's 10%, so it's really growing. So that means as arts marketers, we have to pay attention to this information. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. We're not just marketing to this group of people who don't have anything to do with society, have everything to do with society. So I'm encouraging you how to broaden the way you think, the way you digest information, so that as you're asking for those additional funds that we so desperately need to execute our marketing strategy, you have a foundation. It's not just because you look good or you sound good, but you have the data. You have information that oftentimes board of directors and executive directors, that's what will inspire them. So that's another reason why I'm really encouraging you to look at this. Also, I find that the kind of data that is important affects programming. So when you talk to programming about, we need these kinds of events, these kinds of shows, and they say, why? You can tell them, because this is the demographic that's here at this time. And if we want them to be our audiences, we have to respond to them, in a very meaningful way. So where do you start? I think there are three important factors: leadership, vision, and product. So I think everything starts at the top. It's wonderful that arts marketers, and those of us here will say, this is so important, I want to go back to my organization and do that. But unless you have, the full support of the executive team, your leadership team, your board of directors, it's very difficult to execute this on the level that you want. And so, I've been very fortunate to work in arts organizations where the leadership was clear that unless we are engaged in looking at audience development, that we will not be able to grow and we will not be responsive as an American arts organization. So with Arthur Mitchell at the Dance Theater of Harlem, with George C. Wolfe at the Public Theater, and now with John Schreiber and Dave Rodriguez at New Jersey Performing Arts Center, I'm extremely fortunate to be able to work with leadership that has provided the kind of support so that I have a dedicated department with a staff and a budget. And I know that I'm in a very rare universe, but I talk about it because I want to inspire other organizations to do the same, because I want lots of company. And I want to see that arts organizations are flourishing in terms of engaging diverse audiences because they have this necessary support. And so that's the leadership. And then the vision is, what do you want it to look like? So the answer is not everyone, just so we're clear. I don't know of any arts organization that can just market to everyone. And so when you look at what does cultural diversity mean for me, I think you want to be as specific as you can so that you can measure the impact and kind of guide your work in an effective way. And I think this commitment to diversify audiences is not just ethnically, racially, but we're looking at all the different definitions of diversity, which include class, which is very important in America that we tend to ignore because we're in denial, geography, age, lifestyle, differently abled people, many different ways that we look at how do we make sure that the people who are on the outside are on the inside. So the vision component, I think, is really important. When George Wolfe asked me to come work at the Public Theater, in my interview with him, which was very short, if anybody knows George, it's always short, and he said, so I've been here at the Public Theater for 3 months, and the audience is predominantly white, and I'd love this place to look like a subway stop. How would you do it? And so that gave me the vision. So every day for the 9 years that I was the marketing director there, that was my focus. How do I make this place look like a subway stop? Without all the little things, the four-legged creatures, but all the other components of that. And that was great. That was wonderful. I'd also like to share with you that, this is very much a global topic. We're talking about it here, of course, in the U.S., and I know you come from all over, and we have some visitors from across the pond and other countries. But, I've been able to do a bit of traveling around the world on this very topic, and it's based on vision and leadership. This summer, I was in South Africa, in Bloemfontein, which is a city I doubt anyone here has probably heard of. I know I had not. It's not too far from Cape Town. But the leadership in Bloemfontein is very focused and dedicated to creating a bridge between Black South Africans and Afrikaan, and doing it through the arts, doing it through arts festivals. And it was so inspiring to see, how this is really being translated. Similarly, in Australia, Australia, I was there in August, same kind of concerns, looking at this wave of immigrants coming in from the Middle East, from China, as well as figuring out how to really honor the major contributions of the Aboriginal community. So there's a inwardness now, looking from a lot of the different countries around the world. I got strange requests to go to Moscow, which I went. I'll go wherever I'm invited, it's fine. As long as it's safe, I'm ready to go. To talk about the arts, I'm there. And so in Moscow, I thought, gee, what in the world would they be interested in? But it was the very same thing. They're looking at diversity. They're looking at what is the impact, now that the wall is down, now that we can actually breathe, how do we breathe? How do we do this? How do we embrace, all of these different kinds of individuals that are coming into our city, or looking at the people we have here and making sure we're touching them, in the deepest way. So it is very much a global conversation. The product. So you can make the best intentions, you can have the best intentions and a smart marketing plan, but I think we all need a product that signals, I see you, I hear you, and I welcome you. So what does that look like? Well, that's up to each one of your organizations, and the dialogue that you have internally. But I do think that it's important to represent the voices of your respective communities, and that for you to advocate for programming that is innovative and engaging. I think the programming piece is so critical. And sometimes you have to work with what you have, and so then I believe in building around that, so that it still becomes a stepping stone to the very constituents that you want to engage. It doesn't mean that we dumb down the product. I've heard that before. I don't know where that comes from. But celebrating art and engaging new audiences has nothing to do with dumbing down the product. I think for us, it means we have to step up. But it's not the audience. So just remember, these various communities, cultural groups, however we define them, that we want to touch and engage, they're doing just fine. From a cultural perspective, they've been making choices of how to be fulfilled. They do what they do. And sometimes the choice isn't you. So it's not them, it's us. We're the ones who have to create the environment and the programming to welcome them. So what is the language of community engagement? Well, I think it's important to look at definitions. And so, the word diversity is bandied about in a lot of different ways, and there's hundreds of definitions of diversity. But I would like to offer one that I like in particular, and it was developed by the Queensborough Community College in New York. Not this very sophisticated think tank, but a wonderful community college, but it embraces the spirit of it for me. It says a concept of diversity encompasses acceptance and respect. It means understanding that each individual is unique and recognizing our individual differences. And this can be along the dimensions of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, physical abilities, religious beliefs, political beliefs, or other ideologies. And it's the exploration of these differences in a safe, positive, and nurturing environment that allows us to celebrate diversity. And it means more than just acknowledging and or tolerating differences. It's a set of conscious practices, and that involves understanding and appreciating the interdependence of humanity and culture. I think it's about mutual respect for qualities and experiences that are different from our own, so we're not making judgments about, oh, why they do that? How come they look like that? As opposed to, wow, that is so cool. I think I'm going to check it out. And then understanding that diversity is not only ways of being, but also ways of knowing, in your gut, when you can really trust the fact that this is something that's important and I need to be respectful of that. So I think diversity is really important when we talk about it, and I believe in creating cultures of diversity. I think every arts organization should have a culture of diversity. So what does that mean? That means your staff understands this initiative. It cannot be driven or led by one person or one department. It has to be universal. And so that means that everyone in your environment is in a process of developing sensitivity and awareness of how am I an integral component of helping to engage new audiences. From the person who welcomes people, your house staff, to the person at the reception desk, to the person who cleans your building, to all of the other programmers and cultivators, curators, everyone plays a critical role in building this culture of diversity. And I think the internal culture of diversity that we want to develop is also will expand externally. So that we can educate not only our staff, but we're educating the various communities that we want to engage. And so I think this is a really critical component for us to explore. So some of the tools and core principles for success that I think are fundamental for this initiative are, of course, dialogue and sharing of information. So, for instance, you're here at this conference. I would hope that you go back and have a debrief with your team, with your staff. If it's a one-person organization, look in the mirror, debrief with yourself. But there has to be this sharing of knowledge and information. You know, you may have a community forum. The first time I went to Australia in 2002, I remember arts administrators in New York, they were so excited. They said, well, come back and share everything. So we did. We had a round table, you know, and I invited as many people as I could think of. I just talked about what my experiences were, you know, for that time. So give that some thought. Then create a consistent presence in these diverse communities that we want to touch. So building, you know, diverse audiences, community engagement is not through email, it's not through a direct mail campaign, it is you physically being in those environments, physically placing yourself, physically being 100% available. That's so important so people can see you and feel, you know, how do you actually, you know, think about them. And then, you know, expanded and creative use of our educational sector. So who do we partner with to make this happen? I love working with libraries. I think they're fabulous. I love to read. But second to that, I think libraries are just great partners because people are coming. They're coming in there for knowledge. They want to learn. So your art should be in that environment. It doesn't have to be so separate. And then creative use of the media. You know, I know a lot of us are driven by, you know, the arts critics, and, you know, we've got to get that stamp that says our product was really great, but our artists are people. So why don't we humanize them more? Why don't we talk about how the media can help tell stories about our artists, tell stories about the work that we're doing, the fact that you came to this NAMM conference. That is a piece that you can pull out when you go back home. And of course, it may not be in your major newspaper, but it could be in your local association paper, your organizational paper, your church newsletter. The whole idea of community engagement is having your footprint as broadly as you can in as many different environments that responds and resonates to the people that you want to engage. So it's an ongoing effort. And then, of course, embracing and involving our immigrant community. So why do they have to stand on the side like an order of fries? Let's bring them in. Let's ask, what would you like? You know, what does this look like? And it'll take time. Everything I'm going to be discussing, the case studies, believe me, I'm talking years of effort. What else do we do if we don't invest the time? So this is the investment, is our time. And so I think it's important to look at them, not as this, you know, good grief, now what? But what a wonderful opportunity. And I'm going to go visit. And you take your materials, you take whatever you have, but most importantly, you take your heart and you go and you visit our new friends, our new neighbors. Believe me, they're terrified too. They don't know where they are, what am I supposed to do? But I believe that the arts are the perfect environment in which we can all begin to deepen our understanding and respect for each other. So I remain committed to that for as long as I breathe. And then celebrating our core audiences. So, you know, this does not mean in any way that we make our core audiences feel as if they're no longer important, that we've tossed them to the side. Not at all. In fact, we need them. And so what I would suggest is that we let them know. We're about to engage in this amazing experience that is going to allow us to talk to many different constituents, and we need your help. And how can they help? Well, they can help by welcoming them. They can help through social media. They can help by forming a committee. Many ways, but please make sure that you engage them so that we're just simply adding more chairs to the table. We're not taking away any of them. So how do these communities, look at the psychographics, and how do we look at the psychographics of these various communities and look at the behavior? How do they come to the arts? What is the most important arts experience? And I think that there's some things that perhaps we may omit or we could do better. The first is that to demystify the art. So oftentimes I find when I'm talking to people and they'll say, well, I'm not coming to that play because I don't know what it's about. I understand that. So demystify the art. So for our traditional theater goers who are holding the credit cards as they read the ABCs, great. The title cast director, that's all they need. But if this is your first time, you're going to need a lot more information. And so demystify the art. Talk about it. What is it? And how would I discover myself within this experience? And then present the art as exciting, innovative, pioneering, so that it's not this heavy albatross like, oh, I got to go out to this play again. But it's something that's really exciting and engaging, and because you honestly believe this. And then I think constantly using our communication channels, and we have so many of them, to be able to talk to our constituents about the work in as many creative ways as we can think of. So, educating the community. I wanted to just share 2 examples that I've done at New Jersey Performing Arts Center. And I started at NJPAC 3.5 years ago. I had my own business as consulting for marketing and group sales. And so I had done some work at the Apollo Theater years ago and had worked with John Schreiber and Dave Rodriguez on a musical called Harlem Song. And so fast forward, 2012, I get a call from both of them. So what are you doing? I said, oh, just doing this, doing that. And they say, oh, great. We need an interim VP marketing out at NJPAC for 3 months, just 3 months. And then we're going to hire a full-time VP. So I thought, great, 3 months, okay. And then they said, and you can do your other work. Just be here and be a mom, provide leadership, you need vision. I'm like, okay, great. So I, started my working there, and then a month later, John came in my office and asked me would I take the job. So I looked behind me because I thought somebody else was in the room. I was like, oh, I wonder who I was talking to. And he was like, no, can you take the job? I was like, whoa, how do I do that? But we figured it out, we worked it out. And so that began my work in marketing, for a very large performing arts institution. But I have to say, some of what I observed as I would come to work every day was I did not have the time to be able to touch the very people that I felt I should be engaging, to come into the Arts Center, and that I felt it required a dedicated effort. So I started to float the idea by John, who, immediately got it, and he said, would you like to be Vice President of Community Engagement? So I said, yes. And so that began the development of my department, and that was about 1.5 years ago. And so I wouldn't have been able to be in community engagement had I not done the marketing to understand the landscape and to be able to work with an amazing team of arts marketers at NJPAC. And so we focus on genres at the Arts Center, particularly those that are challenging for us. And so jazz, classical music, and dance are the 3 primary areas that we work with. And so what I've decided to do was to really celebrate this and not make it this painful austerity, but let's bring joy to these art forms so that other people can feel that as well. And Newark is very much a city in transition. It's like Harlem was when I was working in Harlem 20 years ago, with our new mayor, with corporations moving in, with real estate development. It's certainly a burgeoning city. So there's opportunity to really create the kind of robust audiences that I know we can do. And so when I started with jazz, we thought, wow, we need to form a jazz advisory committee. We need to get leaders from the community to tell us how to celebrate jazz. So the first thing they said, you need jam sessions. People don't want to see jazz just on this big stage. You need to be in the nightclubs where it's intimate. We're like, okay. So we had 1 jam session that was really successful. So this year we had 6 of them, and they've all been successful. We've been in malls, we've been in nightclubs, we've been in restaurants, we've been in churches. And so we go to where the people are. So that's been a way to elevate jazz that leads people to our jazz festival, which started last week. And so these are the breadcrumbs, that we drop in your neighborhood, that leads to our front door. Then with our jazz committee also, we have a phone call. We received a phone call. So this is really important to listen to what the community is asking you for. I got a phone call. The head of the Jewish synagogue in Newark, and there's only 1 left, called and asked us, would you come and take a look at our synagogue? We think we could do something. We're like, okay. So John and I went trotting over there, and they have a museum upstairs. So we said, oh, well, let's bring some jazz here. We'll bring a quartet, and we'll have a nice afternoon. So I thought that was the end of it. No. The head of the synagogue had a big vision. So ultimately, what we've ended up with is 8 events that celebrate jazz involving 6 partners, 4 of them churches. The other ones are WBGO Radio and Rutgers Institute of Jazz Studies that have created a 3-month event of celebrating jazz. The title of the exhibit that is currently on display there is Jazz, Jews, and African Americans, Cultural Intersections in Newark and Beyond. So this allows us to really look at the topic of jazz in a very interesting way. We have the Baptist Church, the AME Church, we have the synagogues, we have the Pentecostal Church. We have all of them that are now part of partnering with promoting this exhibit. We're doing events in their churches as well as at the synagogue. So it's been this amazing faith-based collaboration, and it certainly doesn't stop with the exhibit. You know, I have them now involved in many other initiatives that we're doing at the Art Center. But it's part of this was just listening. This is what we would like to do, and then figuring out how will this allow us to touch these new audiences in a very robust way. So with dance, similarly, we, as most art centers, we present dance throughout the year, but not really seeing a consistency with our dance audiences. So we thought, well, let's gather all of the dance groups together and invite them to help us celebrate dance. So I created another advisory committee. I love committees. We created another advisory committee called Celebrate Dance Advisory Committee. So that means that we're looking at this in a very joyful way. And we're going to demystify why people are afraid to come to a dance performance. And many times, like when you say modern dance, people think, oh, is that painful movement with no music? Or classical ballet, oh, I don't know the story. I'm not going to go to that. So you have to diffuse all of that. And so who best to do this but the dance companies? And so the dance companies offer free dance classes throughout the season in various dance schools and churches, liturgical dance groups throughout the city of Newark. We have dance panels. We're constantly educating people and talking about dance. We put it on our social media. So this has been a way for us to really expand the awareness of dance as well as build new audiences. So those are just two examples of using genres, to be able to engage new audiences. I think the digital footprints is also really important when we look at our viral partners and how they can assist us in expanding our message. So viral partners, as you know, organizations and individuals who have their own database, and you ask them to send out your information. So at NJPAC, we have hundreds of them that are incredibly helpful, that help us target particular demographics and allow us to speak to the constituency through people they trust. So sending out a blind email, as you know, is a waste of time, and it's allegedly illegal. I'm not quite sure how illegal that is. But the point is that getting an e-blast from someone you feel a lot more inclined to pay attention to it, along with all the other layers of marketing, that we use to touch these constituents. So that's been really valuable. So when we talk about engaging diverse audiences, I think we have to build bridges, and to plan out a map that figures out what does it take for a person to leave their house to come to your house. What does that look like? And one of my favorite experiences is when I was with the Dance Theater of Harlem, and it was our first time performing at BAM, Brooklyn Academy of Music. And at that time, this was, I think, the early 90s, there still was not, Dance Theater of Harlem had never performed in Brooklyn. I certainly had not performed at BAM. So there was a lot of concern that, oh, goodness, nobody will come, because certainly in the 90s, it's a little better now because Brooklyn is so cool, but in the 90s, you needed a passport, inoculations, IS, all kinds of things to cross the bridge to get to Brooklyn. So unless you really wanted to do all that, you didn't come. So we were trying to figure out, so who actually is going to come and see us for this 2-week engagement at BAM, this 2,000-plus seat house. And so, I did a number of things building, groups and audiences, and there were two things that I think really made a difference. The first was an appointment. I went to my doctor. And she said, after I finish with you, I'm going to a meeting. I said, where are you going? Because I love meetings and committees. And so I said, where are you going? And she said, well, I'm going to, there's a group of Black doctors and nurses, and we're going to have our monthly meeting. So immediately I saw headlines. Doctors welcome Dance Theater of Harlem at BAM. It was like this ticker tape. It just went through my head. And so I just leaned over and I said, Dr. Clark, would you like to buy out opening night to welcome Dance Theater of Harlem to Brooklyn? So she looked at me and she said, are you crazy? We're doctors. I said, I'll help you. So she said, no, they'll never go for this. So already it was a yes in my head. So it never occurred to me that she said no. So we have to be cultural warriors. If someone says no, make it a yes. You make it that way. So always graciously, always polite, but very determined. So I went to the meeting, and in those days, I didn't have all this fabulous PowerPoint and all that stuff. I had slides, photos, posters, but most importantly, I had my love and passion for ballet. And I said to the doctors, we need you to welcome us into Brooklyn. You know, never before has Dance Theater of Harlem had this kind of welcome. It will be a first-time opportunity. It'll be fantastic. And this is how we'll help you to make that happen. And so they agreed. And so we, plugging along, meeting every Tuesday, looking at the sales, not doing so well, and they had even hired an event planner. But what happened 2 weeks before the actual date, Dr. Clark said, let me make a phone call. Following week, we were at 89%. I said, whoa, who did you call? She said, I called our pharmaceutical companies, and I told them we may not be able to accept their deliveries if they didn't support our fundraiser. So that came from her. My point is, you don't have to have all the knowledge and information and resources, but you do have to make your life open to the possibilities. And so we performed the Tuesday night to a sold-out audience. Wednesday, headlines, above the fold, New York Times, byline by Jennifer Dunning, Is There a Doctor in the House? Last night, Dance Theater of Harlem performed before an audience of 2,000 medical professionals. So that came from a doctor's visit. And so these are results of antennas. All of us have antennas. When we do this work of cultural engagement, of developing new audiences, we have antennas, which means there's a sense that we have, there's an intuition that we have that says, go with this, even if you don't have the rest of the answers. I rarely have the whole thing figured out, but I'm so convinced that the arts are always going to be successful that I don't have to worry about that. And as long as it's legal, I'm going to keep plodding away. And so I encourage you to fine-tune your antennas, to be cultural warriors, and to really think about how can I transform where we live, where we, do our art. So that was one of the ways that launched the success in terms of building the bridge. And the second thing that happened for BAM was I also was working with the churches. I love working with the faith-based community, particularly in America. The Black community, the churches are excellent cultural partners. They are organized, they have liturgical dance, they understand the value of the spirituality of the arts, and it's up to you to establish those relationships. It is not by email, it is face-to-face, it is sitting down with the leadership and sharing with them why you feel this is so valuable to work with them. And so working with one of the churches in Queens, her name was Miss Johnson, and she said, Donna, I love Dance Theater of Harlem, but I'll never get my congregation to leave Queens. They love Queens, they're happy here. I can't get them to move. Loving a challenge like I do, I said, so what do you need? What kind of tools can I provide? Because, we can't just ask people to start to help us build audiences. We have to provide tools constantly. And so she asked me for old point shoes. I said, have you smelled them? What do you want with old point shoes? She says, I want people to feel what it's like to be a ballerina. I want them to put their hands in the box. I said, okay. So we gave her the point shoes, and at church service, in the back of the room, she had a table, and she spread out the point shoes, and she would just ask people, come over. Put your hand in this box. This is what a ballerina stands on. Can you imagine 2 inches? Amazing. And I just looked at her like, wow. Then she, said, I will accept payment in installment. Oh, the ultimate, installment payments, that's a lot. That's a real challenge to take $5 this Sunday, $2 next Sunday, but she did that. She had her book and she was ready to do that, and she just did a lot of other promotional things. So the day that they came to see DTH at BAM, she brought 600 members of her congregation, and she had balloons lined along the way to ensure that the bridge was safe and that they felt comfortable and embraced. These were all her ideas. So you don't have to have all the ideas. It helps to be smart, but you don't have to have all of them. And so, these are some of the things that, I kind of think about and I've experienced. So when you talk about the goals of community engagement, I believe it's developing long-term partnerships. Everything that you do, it should be that with the idea that it's going to last after you're gone. That's how long you want to build these relationships. After you're gone, your predecessors will pick up the thread and continue those relationships. So that means you have to be really thoughtful about them. And that means that you work with all kinds of associations. I've had my greatest success with women's groups. because women are incredibly supportive, I have found. I wonder why. Very supportive. And, it's been just great partnerships, working with them, building initiatives, and also working with things that involve youth. And so whatever your art form, there's always going to be an opening, that will allow you to speak to young people as well. And so let's talk about, these measurements of success. I think we look at, okay, how do you decide if it's successful? What does community engagement look like on the success side of things? And so I was concerned about that, in NJPAC when we developed our department. And so working with our executive producer, we created a dashboard. And I encourage all of you to have a dashboard or some document that allows you to do your checks and balances to see if you are tracking the way that you have projected. And so on our dashboard, I have NJPAC in your community, which is a series of events that happen off-site. So in your community means we're out there doing a panel discussion, and we talk about things that relate to those art forms that I mentioned before. It means that we have a program called Books on the Move, which I created because, again, I told you I love books, and I wanted to educate young children about the life of some of the artists that we present. Alvin Ailey is our resident dance company at NJPAC. We present them every year. So I thought, and I had read the biography, a children's biography on Ailey. So I thought, wow, it'd be great to get some copies of this, go to some libraries, read to children, give them a copy of the book, and information they can take home to their parents. And then this is another layer of promotion for the parents to want to buy tickets to come and see the show. And that's exactly what happened. So we worked with 5 different locations and giving over 100 books, which I got donated by simply asking. See, when you ask a question, this is the key. You've already determined yes is the answer. You already have determined as much as possible free on your end, so you don't have to pay, so you can save your budget for hard costs. And you've seen the success of what it looks like. That's how you ask the question. And so that's why I got the books donated to me from Disney. And, we continue to work with these children going to the center. So that's some of the NJPAC in your community. The jazz jam sessions. Something that's been a great gift that I use a lot at NJPAC is our Wells Fargo's Jazz for Teens. And this is a teen performing group that does dead-on jazz. They are wonderful. I take them everywhere. I take them to events, to gallery openings, to church events. We performed at the New York City Marathon, which was amazing, because these kids were playing when the Saints go marching in. We were at the 22-mile point. The runners were really tired by that point. But when they heard the saxophones blowing it out, I saw their lives go, whoa. It was like this whoosh came into their lives. And I was like, wow, you can really see the power of the arts. I mean, I saw it, from the music. And, they were like, wow, this gave us 3 more miles, guys. Come on, 4 more miles, you can make it. And so our Wells Fargo Jazz for Teens have really been a great product for me to give legs to what NJPAC is about. I can't take Aretha Franklin out. I can't take Diana Ross out, some of the artists that we present. I can't even take some of the dance companies out because it's usually one performance. So I had to figure out, how do I work around this? How do I have a product that's sustainable, that's consistent? And fortunately, in our arts education department, we had just the right thing. So that's been really, really helpful. And then, working with colleges and universities, again, this is on our dashboard. I made a goal, 5 colleges and universities we're going to work with, not from a student rush perspective, but curriculum-based initiatives, working with classes where the professors see the value of what we're doing, and they're going to bring the class, to some of the events. So we did this with the idea of classic. What is a classic when we're doing Swan Lake and having the big orchestra? So we want to do a program that examined the music of Tchaikovsky and how is this a timeless piece. So I invited Virginia Johnson and one of the performers from the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra to come together and give a talk on defining the role of classic to a class at Farley Dickinson University. And it was amazing. The students felt so empowered. It's like, wow, now I can go into this ballet understanding the story, as well as why this is such an important work. We did another program with Essex County College on the topic of hip hop. Just so happened I got a phone call. These phone calls are really important. Pick up your phone, because you never know what's going to be on the other end. And I got a call that these Chinese bamboo rappers were in Newark. Now, how could you imagine if Chinese bamboo rappers would be in Newark? But they were there doing some other work. And so I thought, gee, we got to do something with them. So Essex County College has a hip-hop institute. I said, we could make this a challenge. Because I had heard that the Chinese bamboo rappers said, we've been doing spoken word in China for 5,000 years. And people, we all know that hip-hop says, no, we started in the Bronx in the 80s. We created this. So it's like, wow, we can make this a throwdown kind of session. Let's see what's going to come out of this. So I asked the Hip Hop Institute, would they host, this panel and performance? And they were like, yes, you're on. So the panel consisted of a Pakistani hip-hop artist, a Nigerian, African-American, as well as the Chinese bamboo rappers. And they had a very, very engaging dialogue about the origin of spoken word, as well as performance. So this allowed us to reach a targeted demographic, build upon a partnership. We're providing content to the college, curriculum-based. You win on many different levels. So those are some of the ways I'm working with colleges that's on my dashboard. These are things that I can monitor and also evaluate in terms of success. Our advisory council, so when NJPAC was created about 18 years ago, we always had an advisory council which consisted of ministers and our Latino community and our Pride community. I expanded that. I added dance and jazz. I added internal, because it's just as important for me to get the support of our staff as it is working with the people outside. And so I have one representative from every department in NJPAC who sits on this internal advisory committee, and we function as a think tank. And we meet bi-monthly, and we talk about what's going on inside the building, who's coming in, what are the opportunities, as well as things that they see in their regular course of life, and they have been invaluable. We also have our Elders Council, where we work with a group of elderly people who are part of our celebration that we do each year. And so putting all these advisory councils together, we also monetize them. And so I set a dollar goal, how much they can generate through ticket sales, through group sales. And so we're tracking very well to make that goal happen. So there's a monetary component to also community engagement, and I know that while I know that my department would not have not gotten the green light had we not established this, to me it solidifies the importance of the work that we do and that we contribute to the bottom line, and this is how much it is. So that's really important. Also, we talk about sustainable business model, and our group sales comes under my department. So I'm also able to connect the partnerships, all of these various events that we do, to group sales so that it becomes organic. It's like, oh wow, we just came into your church, we did a panel on Revelations. Why don't you bring some of the congregation together and come see Ailey? Of course. Okay, how much are the tickets? I'm finding that it's almost organic in making that bridge happen. So we're able to achieve our group sales goals as well through our community engagement. And then, making NJPAC this vibrant destination. My team goes out, and we're a small and mighty team of 5. And so when we go out into the community, we're representing the heart of NJPAC. And so it's with that boldness and courage and joy that we're able to talk to and engage all kinds of different constituents, which not only include African American, but also in our Ironbound community. We have the Portuguese, we have the Brazilian, we have Cuban. We also have, of course, in our Latino community, Mexican, Puerto Rican. So these are demographics that we really focus on, and we target a lot of our programming. We also impact social media, in a very substantial way, because we provide content. Everything I'm describing to you, we talk about it. So these are items that we put on our Facebook, on our Twitter page, on our Instagram, and we have a social media manager. So she meets with us regularly. We have a calendar so that she sees these are the events that we're doing. This is when we can post it. So all of this creates this culture of diversity. This is how it all kind of comes together. Also, at all of our events, we have enter-to-win boxes. So for lead generation, for me, is very important. I want to keep growing our database. We started with 0 database, my department, a year and a half ago, and we're now at 6,000. And we gathered those names from every event that we do. We have enter-to-win boxes. What are we giving away? Tickets. I have lots. So we're giving away tickets to various shows, and that is an incentive for people to sign up. And I also have a newsletter that I started because I wanted to be able to talk about the relationships, the partnerships, the exciting things that we do. So we have a bi-monthly newsletter that we have a 30% open rate, which is pretty healthy, I think. Then we talk about communications, So I think, as I mentioned earlier, we have to tell our stories in as many different venues as possible. And so while, of course, your trade papers are important, I don't want you to forget the importance of your church bulletins, the importance of organizational newsletters, corporate newsletters. Those are just as valuable for reaching the kinds of audiences that we're talking about. So please keep that in mind as well. And then partnerships, which is my favorite, and that's what I've been describing to you before. On my dashboard, I have a goal of 87 new partners we will have this year, and so far we're at 58. And to be a partner for me at NJPAC means that you're doing 4 of the following tasks. You're a ticket buyer, you attend free events. We have a lot of free events that we do, symposiums, panel discussions, promote on social media. You distribute our collateral, or you promote in your organizational newsletter. So those 58 organizations, associations are doing 4 of the 5 of these things, which gives us the kind of force and impact that you can't really buy. This comes from relationships. And some examples of engaged partners we have are, there's an organization called the Montclair chapter of the Drifters. So I had never heard of this organization before, but I had met them at an event and invited them to some of our stage readings, which were free. And then they came to me and they said, we would like to buy a package of tickets, and we want to spread them out throughout the year, and we want to call it the Montclair chapter of the Drifters in JPAC Performing Arts Series. It's like, woo, okay. So they bought 150 tickets that they've spread out throughout the season that they are promoting to their constituents. This is a group of African-American, well-heeled women who are able to attract and bring in that same kind of constituency. So that's been extremely helpful. So what makes all of this work? Internal collaborations. We have over 300 volunteers at NJPAC, and fortunately, many of them support the work that we do, so that when there's events that are coming up, the 5 of us, we can't cover everything, but the volunteers really help us with the face of NJPAC, with being present in so many different community events. And that's been absolutely wonderful. So what do you think should happen, as we move forward into in this 21st century? I think we have to diversify our leadership on the executive level. And the answer is not, I can't find them. That's not acceptable. We have to keep looking, be vigilant, and step outside your safety zone so you can see the possibilities. I think we have to work with diversity officers and corporations and encourage them to think about programming for Heritage Month events, Black History Month, Latino Heritage, Asian American, all of those months that need content. You be the provider, so it allows you to reach that target demographic. I think continue to explore new and unique venues to present your art. It could be street corners, libraries, synagogues, all kinds of different places. And so, my friends, I wish you the following. Move forward with confidence, hope, and courage to share the arts that's in your heart. I know each of you are here because in some way you love the arts. Identify a philosophical framework to motivate your work. It has to live someplace inside of you. This is not just a job. For me, it's never been a job. When I was 5 years old, I was selling jewelry that I made from telephone wire. I'm not even sure where I found that telephone wire. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, Donna, where'd you get that from? But anyway, I know I sold these cute little bracelets, and then I learned how to crochet, and I sold the hats and the tams. So for me, the idea of selling art, promoting art, is in my DNA. And so you have to think about, what is my capacity to do this work? And it's okay if you don't feel you have it. It's okay. I just ask that you move out the way so that the right person can be in place. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. I think also continue to increase your commitment to your art and the community and be indestructible as a diamond. That's when I talk about this, cultural warrior type of demeanor, which is not a mean-spirited attitude at all. It means that, you're fearless. You are absolutely fearless. And then to live vibrantly. And be happy, really enjoy the work that we do. Despite the fact we're facing some of our greatest challenges, I think it's the most exciting time that has the most amazing possibilities. So I want you to be tenacious and determined. And I've shaped my career based on that kind of attitude and to have a vision of what it is that we really want to see happen. So I'd like you to be unstoppable and lift off. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. I think we can feel very inspired by being warriors of culture as we move forward today. I just have a few housekeeping notes. I'll try to keep it short. Donna, we've purchased copies of her book in our bookstore out in Center Stage, and she has been generous enough to do a book signing till 2 o'clock before you go out into your breakouts. If you would like to purchase a copy of her book and get it signed and have a little chat with her shortly. We are also doing dine-arounds tonight, a little time change. They are made for 7:30 reservations, so you will meet in the lobby at 7 tonight. You may have a little bit of time to sign up for coaching if they are not all full yet, also by the Salt Lake City Hospitality Concierge table. I will also mention that at 3 o'clock today, we are going to have our Arts Action Fund reception. It is free to attend. It's in the Wildcat Room. Who here is a member of the Arts Action Fund? Raise your hand. Not enough of you. Talking about being a warrior of culture, we really want to empower all the arts marketers in this room to also be arts advocates. So we would really like you to come. It's going to be led by our CEO, Bob Lynch, and learn about the coming election. The Arts Action Fund is America's largest national arts advocacy organization, and it's dedicated 100% of its time, money, and political clout to advancing the arts in America. So we really want to empower arts marketers like you to stand up for the arts in America and really make a difference. So stop by, learn about it. Refreshments will be served. So there's that. I will also mention, so that's from 3 to 3:45 during that networking break. This evening, we're also offering a few opportunities for extracurricular fun. A special screening of Young Marvels, a documentary series on extraordinary young artists, will be showing in the Canyons, sponsored by Ovation, our friends at Ovation that are here this weekend. We are also having karaoke night, official part of the program. I'm sure you've been here before, you know how that goes. It's going to be down in the hotel bar, Extra Innings Lounge. Starts at 9. If you are not a karaoke person, we are going to be doing a s'mores party. You will get a stick and marshmallows and be able to roast them over the fire pit yourself. So those are many options to mingle and have fun with colleagues old and new. What am I forgetting? Oh, right. Arts Action Fund has been moved to the lodge lobby, which is where the Imaginarium, follow the light bulbs that are on the floor. Everyone, enjoy.